Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Storytellers. Tonight, we are going to have a little dust up. On the bros the other night, Aaron and I, as we are wont to do, end up mentioning Star Trek. And so the subject of the Wrath of Khan came up, and it's Aaron's favorite Star Trek movie. And I said, it's all right. It's not my favorite. And he was appalled by that statement.
Appalled. Offended by it.
Angered, if you will. And so I said, hey, why don't we come on tonight and we'll talk about it and we'll air our differences, and let's see why you like that one best. I'll tell you why you're wrong. And then and then I'll tell you why I like Star Trek the motion picture the best.
Everybody in the chat is on my side, by the way. So you're gonna
starting from a position of weakness. There's no two ways about it.
All right.
People don't like the first one, the motion picture. And let's face it, when I saw it in 1979, I walked out of there and I was like, oh man, this is disappointing. We just seen Star Wars and all that action, and I remember, all the action in the Star Trek TV show, and so I was disappointed too. Fast forward to 2022 and the release of the director's cut 4K.
Smoked a little weed and then went and saw it and went, wow, this is really good.
This is heady, man. Hey, before we get going, let's say hello to a few people here. Marcus Kellebrew is here. Randy Howell, Citizen Ronan. Usual cast of characters. Dr. Mask's Retro Elixir is here, of course. Says, hail Graham and Aaron. Hail chat. I love you, Graham. Unfortunately, you are wrong on this.
See? Right out of we haven't even started yet.
I know. I am in the minority here. Here we go. H is for heretic. I hope Graham has been stretching, going to bend himself into a pretzel on this Oh, Lord, people. But hear me out, okay? That's all I got to say is hear me out.
I'm waiting, man. I'm all ears, as they say.
Okay. So, let's see. Idiot X is here. The Dennis and Andy Show, a.k.a. DNA. Mason W. Horon the Steadfast. Hello. Okay. So, since you are the guest, why don't you tell me why you think Wrath of Khan is your favorite? Or no, it is your favorite. There's no thinking about it. Tell me why it is your favorite.
Now, do you want me to address anything about the motion picture, or do you want me to just talk about Wrath of Khan?
Well, I want you to start with the positives of Wrath of Khan.
Okay. The positives of Wrath of Khan for me was the first movie, and granted, it was only the second one in the series, but for me, it felt like I was watching a high budget, not film, but a high budget episode of Star Trek. And one of the ones that are my favorite, which are things like the Doomsday Machine or the Immunity Syndrome, where there was tension all the time, lives were on the line. You knew they weren't going to make it out alive, but you knew they were. It had all those sort of elements to it, and it felt like they got Kirk and Spock and McCoy right on the money in terms of the best things we liked about the television show. There was no warming up to it. There was no, and granted, the first movie was a reintroducing of the characters 15 years later, so it had a different responsibility than Star Trek II did, because we already got them reestablished in our minds for the people that were just film goers and not necessarily big watchers of the show. But so everything about Star Trek II, the intensity, the over-the-top villainy of Khan, the revenge factor, I really enjoyed how Nicholas Meyer handled which is essentially a submarine battle between the two, and there was two great battle scenes. The one where Khan sneaks up on him in the Reliant, and Kirk doesn't raise his shields when he should, and they get in that. And then there's the final conflict in the Mutari Nebula.
Yes.
And it was very reminiscent of like a sub battle or something, and sort of harkened back to one of my favorite episodes. Also was from season 1, which was the where they first faced the Romulans. You know, what's the name of that episode?
Balance of
Terror,
mm-hmm.
right? Which was essentially a sub battle
mm-hmm.
in space. So it harkened back to that sort of there's intensity level the whole way through the film that I just really appreciated and enjoyed. Kind of kept me on the edge of my seat. And then, of course, I was so enthralled with the movie that I totally forgot, because I had found out prior to seeing the movie that Spock died at the end. You know, someone blew that, I remember, and it leaked out. And, you know, and I totally forgot about that scene was coming, because I was so enthralled with this Kirk-Khan conflict that was going back and forth. And so
you know who leaked it out?
Huh?
You know who leaked it out? Gene Roddenberry, because he didn't want it in the script.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was trying to get people so angry that they would have to change it in the script.
No, well, that was Leonard Nimoy's sort of caveat, right? To do the movie, you got to kill Spock, because he was so tired of being typecast as Spock. And I think it was interesting. He finally came around and sort of embraced it by the end of the whole thing. But because I had read someplace that he was really shocked and surprised that people cared so much about Spock, that there was this outrage when he died at the end of that movie, and all the letters and all this kind of stuff, that he started rethinking his whole position on Spock and the importance of Spock as a cultural icon and all that kind of stuff. So, so I guess to pare it down, it just had the best elements to me of a Star Trek episode in it. So,
okay, fair enough. And now tell me what you didn't like about the Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
All right. Now, I have to admit, I've seen Star Trek 2 about 100 times. I've seen Star Trek: The Motion Picture about 6 times. But I will say the last 4 times I've seen it, 3 or 4 times, have been the director's cut in the theater. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but was it last year or the year before they released it as like a Fathom event or something in the theaters, the director's cut? Because I know I went and saw it with my son, and it wasn't that long ago.
But I don't think that's the same one that was on Paramount Plus this past month, and that's being released. In fact, I'm supposed to receive that today, the 4K Blu-ray, because
I know it was the director's cut. I saw.
They corrected the lighting. They corrected some of the special effects.
Okay.
And so that's the one I'm going to be talking about.
Okay. Well, I felt the film, and I've seen the director's cut. Okay. And I felt the film was, I don't hate it. Don't get me wrong. But it's probably like my 3rd favorite of all the Star Trek films. Not counting 5, because 5 doesn't even count as a Star Trek film. So we'll just skip that. But out of the ones that were actually decent, out of the 5, not 6, that were actually okay, that's my 3rd. But I felt, first of all, it was a little too self-indulgent. I felt Robert Weiss, an a director of epics, really, and I felt like these sort of like when Kirk first takes the shuttle to the Enterprise, this just extraordinary long scene of them approaching. They were just like reveling in the special effects. Look what we did. Look what we did. Look what we spent money on, kind of thing. And I mean, it was okay because you wanted to be sort of reminiscent about the greatness of the Enterprise. And here we are, we're back on the Enterprise, but that was way too long. And I felt that just sort of set the tone for the rest of the film, which everything seemed to be a slow burn in that movie. Mm-hmm. And I liked the ending. I thought the ending was clever. But at the same time, I felt like I never really felt that sort of intensity. There was sort of a disconnect between the 3 main characters. And again, Spock had been off on Vulcan trying to become more logical, so he was more distant. And I'm not saying it wasn't called for, but I'm just saying that I felt like there was never that sort of, that camaraderie that we had grown to know and love in the series was sort of missing and they also made Kirk a little bit petty, in the motion picture, which bothered me a bit. Mm-hmm. And but again, there was this sort of element of awe attached to that picture, that motion picture. Like you said, when we first went back in the theater, I was a little disappointed too, like you, that it wasn't more action packed and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it was so nice to have new Star Trek material that was, I mean, it was solid, but to me, you know, like I said, I've seen it 4, 5, 6 times, maybe. I've seen Wrath of Khan 100 times. And so that just speaks volumes of where I'm at, my emotional attachment to these two films. So
Sure.
there you go.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I agree with everything that you have said on both these films. Clearly, the Wrath of Khan is a much more action-packed film, and coming on the heels of the motion picture, it needed to be.
Right.
I don't think they thought they cut the budget because they thought on the lackluster performance of the motion picture that they weren't going to put that kind of money into the second one, and it shows. They do some pretty good, some pretty good effects, but not nearly as good as what was in the motion picture. In Star Trek: The Motion Picture, some of the positives that I liked, and again, I'm talking about the latest release. Because as I mentioned, I was disappointed in the first one. There's more the characters make more sense. There's some scenes that are added or re-added, I guess. You talked about a sense of menace or danger. Because they talked about when V'ger finally gets to Earth and it launches those satellites, you see one of them going off, but you don't get a real sense because they show you on a computer thing, which is a pretty crappy computer thing, by the way. These things orbiting, they're setting at points in the Earth to be able to decimate the Earth. In the new version, they show you V'ger shooting these things out and positioning themselves on the Earth. So now you get a sense of what this thing is going to do to the planet. So that was definitely a much better upgrade. The sequence where they're flying Kirk around the Enterprise, very self-indulgent, way too long. Couldn't agree more. But the scenes of the Enterprise flying through V'ger with that Jerry Goldsmith soundtrack, now that the special effects have been remastered, because this thing went out to the theaters while the freaking film was wet. That's how under the deadline they were on this thing, and they couldn't get the effects, especially the mats and stuff like that, the way they wanted them. So it that hurts it. But now, when they adjusted the lighting and everything, when it's flying through V'ger for that 10-minute sequence or whatever it is, I could watch that all day long. The sense of scope and mass is just amazing to me. I've never seen anything like that in a film before.
I agree, because I actually have seen the version you're talking about, because all the elements you're talking about, I remember just seeing recently. Okay. So it did help the ending, or it did help create a greater sense of peril. But to me, it was more of a sense of wonderment. And that scene where they're going through V'ger is visually spectacular. I agree with you on that.
Yeah. I wish they had mentioned that Decker was the son of the Doomsday Machine Decker. I wish they had mentioned that. That would have put a little bit more, a little more salt on why Kirk accepted some of the things that Decker would say to him when, and the Kirk from the TV series would have told him to go fuck off.
Right.
You know? Hey, Bob Gable, thank you for that $4.99 super chat. Why is the 66 Batman movie worse than the single episodes? I feel the same thing with the motion picture. It just wasn't the same for some reason. Oh, come on, people. I'm not done explaining my point.
Yeah, you still got a long way to go in my book, Graham, but you're getting there. You're getting there.
Okay. Well, and here's the other thing about it. Certainly, Wrath of Khan is a adventure film. Motion picture is a science fiction film.
I can give you that. I'll give you that. Yeah.
And I really like that and miss that from movie storytelling, because once Star Wars came, science fiction took a crap. There was no more heady ideas and exploring science in as an adjunct to the fiction part. It just became space fantasy, and I feel that, or space adventure, if you will,
Mhm.
which I think Wrath of Khan is more like. Um, and then my biggest beef with Wrath of Khan is not story; it's design work. Hey, Randy Hal, thank you for that Canadian $5 super chat.
Here we go.
Tomorrow is Star Trek Day. Ignore it. Alec Kurtzman wants to use it to extend his contract with CBS. Focus on Wrath of God instead. Wraith of God. Not bad. I thought there was a typo there, and the typo was me.
You can never ignore Star Trek. Star Trek cannot be ignored. Well, maybe the
That's
current
right.
Star Trek can be, but classic Trek can never be ignored.
No, TOS, no way.
Yeah.
The uniform shift, I just can't stand, and I mentioned that on the show. I had some pictures here, and I haven't downloaded up to my damn pictures yet. Comparing the two,
Well,
and
hang on a second. Let me push back a little bit right here while you're waiting for the you like the 70s polyester look better than the more traditional, maybe naval looking outfits or more formal looking outfits of the movies after that.
Even naval outfits aren't that clunky.
Okay. But you're telling me that you would prefer the 70s polyester look to what they did in Wrath of Khan.
Absolutely.
And going forward, they kept those uniforms through all the movies, so they must have liked them.
No, they kept those movies and all the uniforms because the actors were getting fat, and they had
to
so they put the big fat belt. They put the double-breasted thing across. I mean, Kirk was on a diet. Shatner was on a diet for like 6 months to slim down for the motion picture, and he looked better than he did at the end of the 3rd season of the TV series.
Yeah, I give you that. Yeah,
you know, all the characters looked amazing in the first film. I think they all thought, this is our Star Wars. This is our chance. This is what we always wanted. This thing is, we want to look like they remember us and all that kind of stuff. And after it kind of didn't do so well, I think they didn't think they were going to get another shot at it. So they went back to, Denny's and started ordering
well, Scotty for sure.
Oh, yeah. Scotty.
It takes Scotty long to
crowd,
put on a few pounds.
Except for Nimoy. Nimoy still looked pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I think Nimoy, out of all the actors in Star Trek, took it, which is funny, as much regret as he seemed to have early on, he seemed to take it more seriously, more professionally than maybe anybody else in the series did. I think Shatner just by nature is a ham actor, right? And I remember listening to a video that Nicholas Meyer did, and they were saying, how did you get the performance out of Shatner? And it was like, he goes, I just kept making him do take after take after take after take, because eventually he'd get bored. And when he got bored, then he gave actually a decent subdued performance, because everything he was doing was like, like he said specifically in Khan, the Wrath of Khan, when they're having the face off, and the first time, and Khan says, Admiral, your time is up. And then, Kirk goes, here it comes. Mm-hmm. Right. Well, the way he originally said it was, here it comes. And Nicholas Meyer was like, are you kidding me? I mean, why don't you just telegraph to Khan that something's up, right? And so he couldn't get him to change it. So he kept saying, oh, we screwed up the sound. We have to do it again, and we got to do it again. And finally, Kirk got bored and then just gave that, here
Interesting.
And then he was like, yes, that's the way you should have delivered it in the first take, But I just always felt like Nimoy really got into his character and really understood Spock and wanted to make him layered. And so I always thought that he was the guy that was, I always loved Kirk's melodrama, but in the movies he started to get out of control, and get a little too happy with himself. But Nimoy always seemed to be sort of right in line with his character. So
I would push back on that. And I would say that Shatner's a stylist, and it was that style that made that show so popular. And I'm not talking about third season episodes where he was way out of control and over the top. I'm talking about, you look at him in that first season, and he
Yeah.
is so nuanced. His performance is very nuanced, it's intense when it needs to be, but it's also layered, and that included into most of the second season as well. And then by the third season, you get the, all the over
Yeah.
the top stuff.
Well, that's a good point. I should have clarified, because I am a Shatner fan, but as he's gotten older, and I was kind of specifically targeting the movies. You can see where every movie he gets a little bit more out of control. And Nicholas Meyer comes back for the sixth film and tries to reel him in and does a pretty good job of it. But there's still some scenes in there I was like, geez, really? You're going to go with that? When he gets on one knee and goes, fire, at the Klingons in 6, and you're just like, oh, come on. But, a few of those, but yeah, I agree. In especially the first season of Trek, he was really good.
Oh, he was amazing, and it was Shatner that made Trek what it was. Anybody else, you could have stuck Jeffrey Hunter in there, who was a decent actor, or you could have had somebody like Guy Williams, who was just so, who would have turned it into a cardboard character, a cardboard heroic Flash Gordon character. James T. Kirk was fully formed right from that second pilot episode. You don't see any. You see a difference in Spock. You see a difference in Uhura. You see a difference in Sulu, and because those characters evolved. Shatner had Kirk down from that first episode, and that continued all the way through.
I would agree, and I think that they knew what they wanted Kirk to be, or Roddenberry did, but I'm not sure that they had Spock figured out, and some of the other ones, like you said, because Spock was very up and down for the first 5 or 6 episodes. Now, granted, they weren't all they weren't shown in the order they were filmed either, which doesn't help. But I listening to interviews with Nimoy, he always sounded like he really felt like he was really trying to understand the character and make the character work. Because I think he had I don't know if is it a bigger challenge, do you think, to play completely unemotional and then have to let a little emotion through every once in a while, or to, the responsibility that the character that Kirk had of, being this sort of Horatio Hornblower type character, but having to be in charge of this ship, but still this inner adventure that he has. So it's kind of like you always seem to be sort of maybe wanting to let loose a little bit more than he was able to, because he was the captain and he had to, act a certain way. And so, I mean, there was layers in that, of course, but I just, again, my biggest complaint with Shatner is, as he moved along, he sort of seemed to become a little bit of a parody of himself, like we say that Jack Nicholson and some of these other actors have become, where they have a shtick and they just do that shtick and they're not really
De Niro, Pacino, they've all fallen into that.
Right. So,
they don't take risks.
So, okay. So you're basically, you're saying that you prefer, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to try anyway.
Put some words in. Let's see.
You're saying
they're not right.
You're saying you prefer the first Star Trek film because it's more of a sci-fi movie,
correct,
rather than a space adventure, action adventure space film in space. But to me, now there's a couple episodes of Star Trek, but to me that sounds antithetical to what the series was. The series was a lot of adventure, or at least in my opinion, the best episodes were the adventure ones where they were in trouble and in danger. And so you're saying you liked Star Trek, the motion picture, because it was more akin to something like
Balance of Terror.
Well, but if you take a different film, like like a Kubrick 2001, right? That's a science fiction film, right? It's not an adventure film,
right?
So are you saying, are you saying you prefer that just because of the intellectual exercise of it, or are you just saying that? Are you saying you prefer those type of sci-fi movies, and that's why you prefer this than regular Trek, which I would say Star Trek 2 is more regular Trek.
No, because I don't think either one of them hit on Star Trek, and they both have their failings. Nothing beats original Trek TV show. As far as I'm
Granted.
concerned, after the first movie, that was the end of Star Trek. I include the animated series as canon because DC Fontana and David Gerald and a bunch of other original writers wrote for that, and they used scripts that were turned down for the TV series. So that felt like Trek because all the original actors were doing it as well.
Right.
And then we get our first shot here where, okay, yeah, they made changes to the Enterprise, real upgrades, I have to say. Changes to the uniforms, but the characters look the same to me. Slightly older, but they look the same.
Okay.
We fast forward and we get to, them trying to patchwork back into the Trek franchise, this action tale. And Khan and Kirk never meet. That's a problem. I hate the uniforms. The tech seems like it went backwards. Kirk's got a communicator that looks like something they had in World War II that you would have to crank to talk. It's so freaking fat.
I agree with that. I wasn't quite sure why they went instead of streamlining it, because it's in the future. It should have been better, not clunkier.
Yeah, it shouldn't have gotten
I agree with that. Yeah. Okay.
Again, the uniforms, the special effects weren't as great. Yes, the story was more engaging. But the other thing is, and I agreed with Roddenberry on this, is I thought the death of Spock was terrible. I didn't like that.
Really?
Yeah. Now we can look back at it and say, well, Spock didn't die. It's just like Death of Superman. We knew Superman was coming back.
But I mean, you have a character that's sacrificing himself, and it seemed like, and they brought it up earlier in the movie, obviously, about the needs of the few being more important than the needs of the one, or the needs of the many being more important than the needs of the few or the one. And so they kind of set that up where Spock made the logical decision. The only way that they're all going to die, right? So the only way anybody's going to live is if someone sacrifices themselves to fix the ship. And logically, he was the guy to do it. So, or at least he felt so. So I didn't think it was cheap. I thought it felt organic to me, but it was within the realm of the story. But obviously I didn't want it to happen. Right. You don't want to have, that sort of finality, because then it becomes ridiculous as they try to bring him back. And, then you got to accept, then it gets a little too much, but just for the sake of that one film, I thought it worked within the context of that film.
Let me just thank Bob Gable here for that $4.99 super chat. The great Gremlin episode of The Twilight Zone proved Shatner was a great actor. It's a good episode.
John Lithgow was great in the movie in the same role, too.
Yeah, Gerald Lang, thank you for the $5. Shatner was in an episode of $6 Million Man, season 2, called Burning Bright. He plays an astronaut who was exposed to a solar flare. I remember that one.
Yeah, he was also in Barnaby Jones.
He was in everything.
He was. In the 70s.
He was in Hawaii Five-0.
Well, did you read that story? I think it was actually him that told it, where that he was right after Star Trek, couldn't get arrested, and was like living in a van down in Hollywood Boulevard or something.
He had a camper.
Camper. That's what it was, right? Yeah. And then,
the other thing, I understand the context of the story that they, Spock sacrificing himself. If they're going to kill him, that's the way to do it. But they were planning on killing him. That was it, because that's what Nimoy wanted. And they only brought him back because Nimoy said, I'll come back as Spock if you allow me to direct.
Right.
So, the Star Trek 3 came about with the return of Spock. I mean, they left plenty of breadcrumbs so that they could write Spock back into it if they needed to. But that wasn't in their intent. So to me, when we saw it, it was Spock was gone. He was dead. And that was it, because we knew the backstory.
Right.
And so that's why I didn't like it, because Spock's dead. And now that changes the franchise forevermore. Making them older and dealing with age was another thing too. That changed the franchise. It made it not Star Trek. to me,
But
because
how do you get around that though? I mean, you've got aging actors, right? You can't pretend that this isn't going on, right? I mean, you have to address it, don't
sure
you?
you can. Why not? Because after that, it never comes up again. And for years and years, they're running around the universe, in their 50s, uh, on the Enterprise and stuff, So if you didn't address it and draw attention to it, it would have just been, oh, great. The band's back together again, you
Mhm.
know? So that was one of my biggest beefs, also with
So the inner child of Graham Nolan did not want the franchise to age. He wanted to be pulled right back into where he left off 15 years earlier.
Yes, and they did that to me in '79 with the motion picture.
Well, but wait a minute now. Kirk was he was an admiral in that one, wasn't he?
Yes, yes,
And so he was, although he didn't show any rust, I don't think really like he did in Star Trek 2 in making some dumb command decisions or lack of decisions that let
right.
him get in trouble. Um, I don't know. I accepted it as kind of like, I don't want to use this because it sounds like a swear word, but the next generation of Star Trek, not the television series, which I am appalled by the way,
Right.
but it was like kind of to me, I was okay with it because I felt like these guys are older and it's an interesting conundrum to take Kirk, who his whole life is adventure seeking, right?
Right.
And maybe it's a little unbelievable that he would have ever accepted promotion, but we'll give him that. And then he did, and then felt he made a mistake, which clearly came out in the film.
Mhm.
And then I liked the idea that he was a little bit rusty, but then he came back and saved the day anyway, because he ended up being the incredibly smart and clever Kirk that he always had been. It just,
Mhm.
it was just like getting back on the bike took him a little bit of time. I really enjoyed that part of it because I guess I went in expecting them to be older and not be the same as they were. Not in terms of relationships, the characters, that's what I wanted was those relationships,
Mhm.
but just how they were physically. And I granted the movie series after 2 just turned into another TV series that was being theatrically released.
Yeah,
Right. I mean, like the third
and not a
one,
good one.
the third one was,
Thank you, Bob.
it might as well have been a television episode. The sets were terrible and everything. But again, it was Trek and the gang was all back together. So I was okay with it,
The introduction of the son too.
Yeah, I didn't really like,
I hated that. He was such a simp, and that kid did not come from the loins of Kirk. I'm sorry. You
No,
know,
I agree with that. I never liked that guy.
no,
Never liked him.
I didn't believe that for 1 second. In Carol Marcus, where does she come from? All of a sudden, remember in what was the episode Shore Leave? Remember
Yeah.
when in Shore Leave where Kirk all of a
Ruth.
sudden Ruth comes, and Ruth
How
was
can it
love.
possibly be you? Yeah.
Yeah. I just watched that one the other day.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah,
It's great.
it's great.
And
Um,
Finnegan. Oh my! They should have brought Finnegan back. Come on, you kidding me?
yeah, right.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, so why didn't they use Ruth or somebody like that? Somebody from like when he's telling uh, uh in the pilot, where Kirk and Gary Mitchell, uh is that the actor's name or is that the
yeah,
character?
Gary Mitchell. No, you're right. From the pilot, the second pilot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it is Gary Mitchell.
that's the character's name. Yeah,
That's the character's name. Yeah, yeah.
right,
So
right.
when Gary Mitchell is telling Kirk about, how he planted, that little blonde in front of him and all that kind of stuff, it's
Mhm.
like, well, was that Ruth? Who was that?
Yeah.
Um, so
No, you're
yeah,
right. They could have done a better job of tying in some of the elements from the show, considering that Harv Bennett, who they hired to do the producing, right, it was know nothing about Star Trek, but he did go back and watch I give him credit. He went back and watched all the episodes to kind of get a feel for what he was doing so he could make a movie that he felt was
yeah.
in line with what the show was. but yeah, I mean, there was some liberties taken there that we had to accept that, but I think, if you're on a 5-year mission and you're only showing us, 3 years of it, he could have hooked up with her there in the 5th year, just on the I mean,
Yeah.
there's stuff I kind of let go and just accepted and said, yeah, well, there's time gaps in there where this could have happened. But Merritt Buttrick, the guy that played his son, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't on board with
Yeah.
that at all.
I,
I was
I,
glad
I
when the
just thought
Klingons
that whole
killed him.
subplot was terrible.
Well, I think they knew that, right? Because they killed him in the next movie. The
Yeah, because
Klingons.
what can you do with him? I
Yeah.
mean, it's this dangling plot hole that they had to get rid of because Carol was gone.
Yeah.
They didn't bring her back. So that whole relationship thing, it never got to the point where you believed that relationship was resolved or anything like that. It was way too pat and just. I just didn't buy for 1 second that guy was James Kirk's son.
No, I will give you that. He did not get the gene pool from James Kirk, that's for sure. But it is also interesting that they introduced these elements in 2 and then completely abandoned them going forward. Like, yeah, maybe that wasn't such a great idea. Let's forget all this nonsense and get back to just the crew out in space. Which is essentially what they did, right? And so, but again, if you're looking at Star Trek II just in a vacuum and saying this is a singular movie, I don't think those things are as glaringly bad as they become, like Spock's death, then they bring him back,
Yes.
or they bring in, this woman that he supposedly was, had this affair with, and they were going to be married perhaps at some point, and then she just disappears again. She comes back into his life with his son and then disappears, and we never see him again, right? So yeah, for the what was that did you get a oh, you guys should Graham cheered when he was stabbed. Hey, so did I. But I was furious that they cast Christopher Lloyd as the Klingon. I was just like, are you kidding me? That was right after Back to the Future, and I was like, you just can't do that.
Yeah.
And expect us to buy that, because he became such an iconic comedic character in Back to the Future.
Yeah.
That just putting a bunch of Klingon makeup on him was not going to work.
Well, he could have easily slid into Jim from Taxi.
Yeah.
Those noises he makes, when he's killing the hairy worm or whatever.
Yeah. But we digress. We're getting off topic. We're getting all the movies in here. But
yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like maybe we're looking for some different things in our Trek movie experience. And that is kind of what's jading our opinions one way or the other.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely right. That I was looking for something and you were looking for something, and some of your something got satisfied in Star Trek 2. Some of mine did too. But more of mine got satisfied in Star Trek 1. Now that it's a more cohesive film.
Yeah, I would say I appreciate Star Trek the motion picture. I like it, I appreciate it, but I don't love it because it didn't give me enough of what my favorite elements of Star Trek were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many missed opportunities there. I mean, you had them all together when they were still relatively young. The fever for sci-fi was through the roof because of Star Wars. This was their shot, and they blew it. They had too many cooks in the kitchen. Robert Wise, who I don't understand. I mean, he did The Day the Earth Stood Still. In 1951, the first 3 alien invasion movies ever came out, all within months of each other. And Day the Earth Stood Still was one of them, and one of the best. The others 2 was The Thing from Another World and The Man from Planet X. All came out within months of each other.
Well, let me ask you something. Would you rather watch The Thing from Another World, or would you rather watch The Day the Earth Stood Still?
I'd rather watch The Thing from Another World over any movie.
Well, but look at it. To me, that's like saying, to me, The Day the Earth Stood Still is Star Trek 1, and The Thing from Another World is Star Trek 2. Because again, the Day the Earth Stood Still was what an action film. It was more of an intellectual and a commentary on mankind, it's a great film, right? But it's not something that you're going to buy a bunch of popcorn and go, let's go, man, buckle me up and let's ride. And
well, I think your analogy is off because we're talking about pre-existing characters that we love and have expectations for.
True.
Whereas those two films, they're standalone things. We don't know who these people are, and we go along for the ride the first time we see that movie.
Right. But my point, I think, was that you're taking Robert Weiss, who's not an action director by any stretch of the imagination, and giving him this franchise, or at least out of the gate. And he's a big name, Academy Award winner. And he gave you, you know, sort of a David Lean treatment of, you know, Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
But if they had somehow been able to say, okay, let's take the budget and do something more like Wrath of Khan with that budget in the first one, you know, instead of something. But don't you think in some ways that the first movie, which was produced by Roddenberry, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Correct.
That was more of a Roddenberry sci-fi vision than it was what Star Trek had become throughout the series.
Yeah, I would go even further and say it was a Roddenberry post 60s version of science fiction, because his views of the world and his views of science fiction and of politics went more radically left, to the point of he thought of this world of Star Trek as this utopian world where there was no internal strife, there was no hatred, there was no fighting. It just goes against human nature,
right?
You know, I mean, and it also goes against the writers, because you have to have conflict to have drama. So he's saying all the drama's got to come from outside forces. It can't come from within. And you know, that was one of the biggest beefs that Next Generation writers had to deal with that first season, because he was there. No, you can't do that. You know, Roddenberry hated the fact that Kirk shot the worm that came out of Chekhov's ear in the second Star Trek movie, because it was an alien life form, and they wouldn't just kill indiscriminately, no matter what it looks like.
Oh, they just killed people, and see,
right? I mean, that's ridiculous. That's not a real universal.
Well, that's and again, I don't want to get, you know, there's no intention to get political on this, but that's the problem with this leftist philosophy, is they elevate mankind to a level that they are incapable of ever reaching or sustaining, and then they pretend, oh, if we just have enough technology and enough wisdom, we'll all be nice people. No, we won't. In fact, they'll probably be worse people, as we can see it now, how bad the government is right now. You give people more power, more intelligence, more access, they become worse people, not better people. So this whole sort of utopian idea to kind of, it's just foolishness. And especially, like you said, when you're writing a drama, if there's no conflict, there is no drama. You know? And to take that out of something.
The Federation, Aaron, and our current government are the Klingons.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm just waiting for the Organians to come and clean everything up for us.
The Organian peace treaty.
Yeah.
You must leave. Your mere presence is agony to us.
Most distasteful. Please go. Core was the best Klingon ever, let's face it.
He was, because he was like, he understood Kirk and respected him.
Yes.
You know, as a worthy adversary. I really liked that, because they were almost like buddying up at the end, you know. Yeah. It's like, I guess that there's not going to be a war. And he goes, a pity, it would have been glorious, you know.
Yeah. And again, another Shakespearean actor who really knows how to chew it up.
Yep, exactly. There was some good stuff in there. But yeah, so isn't it funny then that we can look at and say Roddenberry almost ruined his own franchise?
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt about it. You know,
because, you know, it's so interesting, because he did, what was the first thing he did? Was that cop show, right? The detective, or what was it called?
Oh, the Lieutenant.
The Lieutenant.
Yeah, it was a military show. And Gary, the guy who played Gary Mitchell, Gary Lockwood.
Yeah, Gary Lockwood. Yeah,
He was in that. Yeah. But before that, he wrote some of the best episodes of Have Gun Will Travel.
Yeah. So here you got this guy that seemed to understand the drama involved, and you would look at like older Roddenberry would never have created the character of Kirk, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And who was it that who was the producer of the Next Generation? I can't remember the guy's name, but I remember him saying something that he just hated the character of Captain Kirk. Hated it.
Wasn't it Bennett? Wasn't Harv Bennett?
Maybe it was. But I thought that maybe it was somebody else, but I thought that it was whoever the producer was of that despised that. That's why they made Picard such a, a whitewashed kind of just, generic, not generic, but just emotionless.
Drinking talker.
Yeah. It's like, gee, many Christmas. Yeah. We'll send number 1 to go have adventure. I'm just going to sit here and
do a number 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then this guy, they had to write him up too as the seasons went on. Like, Captain, Picard, he negotiated blah 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 and did all this shit that we never got to see, by the way. But in the first season, what does he surrender the Enterprise 3 times?
Yeah,
at least twice for sure in the first season. Kirk would have blown the damn thing up.
Yeah, there's no way. It's like, yeah, and it's how can you have a film that's supposed to be an adventure, action adventure out, what was it? Described it as How the West Was Won in Space or something like that, where you not have
Wagon Train to the Star.
Wagon Train, yeah. And it's kind of like, I just don't understand how you can look at that. And again, it's people letting their ideology get in front of good storytelling. And understand that there's certain elements, like we just discussed, that have to be there for something to be successful. Now, Next Generation did last for 8 or 9 years, which I can never understand because I despised that show.
Yeah, I did too. Rick Berman.
Berman, that's the guy. Yes, yes.
Yeah. So he hated Kirk.
That was my understanding. He hated the character of Kirk, and of course, he's the one that was responsible for Kirk getting killed like a painter on a scaffolding there in that.
Oh, geez. Okay, that makes sense then.
Remember, how did he find Kirk? Like James Kirk's dream, his fantasy for his life is to be living on a ranch by himself with some chick riding horses. Right. No. His dream life is on the Enterprise.
That's right.
If they had gone into that little time ribbon or whatever that vortex they were trapped in, they would have found him on the Enterprise fighting Klingons with a couple of Ryan slave girls in his room. That would have been, his fantasy world that he was living in.
Yeah. If they really wanted to explore the whole age thing, that would have been the way to do it. It's like, some people never change.
Yeah.
And James Kirk should be one of them. So when he's like, 60, 70 years old, he should still be dogging around. He should still be, kicking ass on a bridge,
That's right. They should be, he should still be in those bars that they went to in the Wolf in the Fold, with the exotic belly dancers. He's a 70-year-old dirty old man. But
and then you have all these young people on the bridge, and he's thinking, oh, geez, these kids, they don't know what the hell they're doing, blah, 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 my day. That would have been so much more interesting to me if you're gonna do the whole age thing,
but he wasn't that old, dude. He in Star Trek 2. I watched it when it just was out in the theaters here this past weekend, and I was sitting there thinking, okay, that was 1981, 82. So he was 36 and 60. So he was like 50 years old when that movie came out.
Right.
We're 8 years older than he was in that movie. So he really wasn't that old.
Right.
So he still could have, scored some alien chicks and stuff, I think, easily.
I mean, people are living longer and they're more vibrant now than they've ever been. I remember when my grandfather was 60. I always thought, oh my God, what an old man. Well, I'm 60. I lift weights. I go to the gym. I'm busy. I'm active. So that's I'm hoping by the 23rd century they're living to 112. Or longer. That they're eating better and they're exercising, they're taking better care, and medicine is better, and blah blah.
If we don't kill each other off before then.
That's true. Well, that would suck.
Yeah, that seems like a good possibility. But well, it's funny, we have sort of thrown out the issues here about the two movies, but in reality, we're both fans of both movies. We just have a preference of which one we would place at the top. And it's interesting, they're for completely different reasons, right? It's not like I'm saying, oh, this did this really well, and you're like, oh, no, it didn't. You're saying, yeah, it did, but I prefer this, which is kind of an interesting debate. It's like we're not disagreeing. We just have different fundamental desires from our Star Trek film.
Exactly. We have holes that need to be filled, and mine filled some, and yours filled some too. And Ethan is in the chat here. Hey, Ethan. And tomorrow, that's the big day. Well, I wonder what's happening tomorrow.
3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern time. We are launching Wraith of God Blood Hunters, so that should be exciting.
And we're going to launch it on Comic Artist Pro Secret.
That is correct.
All right.
I'm probably going to start as we talked about, the campaign a little bit before we go on, because if there's any sort of, oops, why isn't this working? I can go back and fix it really quick. So I'm not on the, ruining the live stream by not having it running. But yeah, it's going to be big.
You're going to come out of the gate strong. I know you are.
Feeling good. Although there's always that sort of trepidation, that nervousness, because you really don't know what's going to happen, but you hope for the best, and it's exciting, and I'm waiting for to see if I get attacked on Twitter again, or if people are just going to ignore it. We'll see.
All the haters are gone.
Yeah.
They know they can't get to you anymore because
that's right. They tried once and failed.
That's
so
right. I like when I have to pay more taxes than those losers earn.
I haven't got to that point yet, but there was an artist. I don't know. I probably shouldn't say who it was, but I remember this was during, it's just about the time I was breaking in. Thank you, Ethan. And I was at a con with him, and he had made the joke about, and he was on a big book that was paying huge royalties, and it was like September, and he goes, we were talking about how much we made or whatever, and he goes, I paid more in taxes than you've made right now at this far in the year. And I was just like, yeah, that kind of put things in perspective for me.
Yeah. That's not a good thing, mind you. Yeah, okay, you made a lot of money. I understand it, but also it's a bad thing because the government takes so damn much.
Well, and he was the one who made me, think about the money. He would say that he would make money at cons, and he would just go home and put that cash into a fishbowl and use it for groceries and stuff, so it never got reported, right? And he said, one time I had 10 grand in that jar in my house, of cash, just from what he was making at the cons and stuff. So it was a different time as we watched the industry slowly imploding. It was exploding back then. And
Comicsgate is exploding now.
Yes. There you go. Well,
H is for Heretic. Aaron is launching Thursday. Rini is launching Saturday. Andy is launching Monday. And I am launching October 1st. So
I love how you put that. So your first 30 days are going to end right on Halloween. Perfect.
That's no accident.
Yeah, I know.
It is no accident. I wanted my ghost story to open on October 1st. That's also when I start my 31 Days of Monsters. So, that's the show I do.
Yeah. Well, you were supposed to have me on last year to discuss something. And we never hooked up.
Something came up.
Yeah. No, do you do new movies you've never done before every year, or do you repeat?
I try to do movies I haven't done before, but that's getting harder and harder.
So you've already done. Have you done the 1931 Jekyll and Hyde?
Yes.
Love that movie.
I think that was the one I was supposed to have you on.
Yeah, I think
I asked you what your favorite was.
Yeah, that and Werewolf of London are probably my two. Well, non-Karloff Frankenstein films. Those are my two favorites.
I have to check. I'm not sure if I've done Werewolf of London. It might have been a couple of years ago.
I don't want to get ahead of myself here on that, but that's like maybe my favorite werewolf makeup.
Yeah.
And it's funny because Henry Hole didn't want to go full Lon Chaney because he wanted people to see his face because he was an actor and all this kind of stuff. And it ended up, he had like a really good face for it. And it really, I thought, worked well. It was really scary. And yet you could still, a lot of it wasn't covered up with prosthetics or anything. It was his face.
Yeah. And my favorite is that jaunty little hat he wore too.
Yeah, I know. Well, you remember the
I'm serious. I love that. I think he looks so great with that like deer, what do they call that, deer killer coat or whatever he's wearing.
Right.
And then that little like Irish cap type thing.
Well, it's almost an iconic look. It's nonsensical, but at the same time, it looks really cool. Yeah. It's almost like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, except he's a werewolf, But I remember looking that scene where the two old gals that are renting him the room, right? They're looking in through the keyhole, and they see he's a werewolf, and they see him putting on his hat and his coat, and I thought, okay, this werewolf has enough presence of mind to put on a hat and coat so he's not easily recognized, but then he can't control himself from killing people like a wild animal. It was a nice little.
Don't forget the Wolfman too. I mean, when in the first film, his father, he ties him to a chair and he's wearing a wife beater, and then when he's crossing the moors, he's put his button-down shirt on.
Yeah.
So now he's a Wolfman, and he's like.
Yeah, or Jack Pierce said, "I'm not covering your whole hair with body. Or your whole body with hair. Put a shirt on."
Yeah.
So werewolf makeup only goes this far.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but and then shoes too. Like there were times where he'd wake up as Lon Chaney as Larry Talbot, and he'd have his shoes on.
Right, because he always took his shoes off during the transformation, so he'd walk around in his wolf toes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I never hated that movie, but I didn't really like it that much. I thought it was kind of dumb. But then I rewatched it recently, and I thought, you know what? This is actually pretty good. Lon Chaney Jr. has this nice little character arc in there and everying,
yes,
and
it's
a lot better than. Go ahead.
You feel sorry for him.
Yes.
For Larry Talbot,
And it's kind of funny. He shows up and he's sort of this womanizer, this rich womanizer, and then he sort of becomes this sort of, I don't want to say pathetic, but this sort of very sad character by the end of the film that you really identify with. And I was really surprised because I hadn't really watched it since I was a kid until a few years ago when I rewatched it, and I was like, this is actually a pretty good film.
Well, we talked about how we don't believe for a second that Merritt Buttrick was William Shatner's son. There is no way that Lon Chaney Jr. was Claude Rains Jr. Claude Rains.
I know Claude Rains is about 5'4", and Lon Chaney was like
6'3".
Yeah, he must have had a huge wife,
big burly dude.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, that is funny.
Yeah.
I had never thought of that before, but that is so true. Now, what did you think of the remake with
Benicio del Toro?
Yeah, del Toro.
Again, that's another one that the director's cut fixes a lot. It's a better film. The relationship.
Is that Joe Johnson? Did Joe Johnson direct that?
Yes.
The Rocketeer director, yeah, in Captain America.
Yep.
I just watched it for the Rick Baker makeup, which was incredible.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't even care at that. To me, it's like going to see Jurassic Park movies. I don't care if it's any good or not. I'm just there for the dinosaur effects.
Right.
And they're not as interesting anymore that they've gone all digital. But back when, Stan Winston they were actually making those dinosaurs. I was like, I don't care if there's a story in here or not, man. Just show me these giant dinosaurs these guys built.
Yeah.
So I was kind of like that way with the Wolfman. I didn't mind it at all. I mean, everybody panned it, said it was horrible and everything. I would like to see the director's cut now that you mentioned it. I didn't realize there was one out there.
Yeah, it's definitely better. The relationship stuff you start to believe more, but it still has its issues. I wish that that Rick Baker had done something more with the eyes by leaving his human eyes in there. He did it so that you could see the humanity in him and stuff. But I would have preferred to see like some yellow wolf eyes.
Yeah. Go the next step. You
Yeah.
wonder you wonder how oftentimes actors, we had just talked about Henry Hull, not wanting his face covered up, that they make demands on, well, I'll be in this movie, but I've got to be able to, you got to be able to see my performance and all this kind of stuff. So like in Planet of the Apes, the Mark Wahlberg one, which Rick Baker again did the makeup for that. Charlton Heston wouldn't wear the monkey teeth.
Oh,
so when he's dying in bed, he has his normal teeth, and the prosthetic doesn't like jut out like a monkey like it should. It's more human looking because he would not wear the teeth. And then what do? You're just like, all right, it's Charlton Heston.
Moses says he's not wearing the teeth.
He's not wearing the teeth.
Hey, Chris F., thank you for that $5 Canadian. Just watched Star Trek the Motion Picture 4K Blu-ray. Looks amazing. All right, I got somebody on my side.
Well, it looked amazing.
It is amazing. I told Bill Sienkiewicz about it too. He went and watched it and just fell in love with it again. He loved it. He's a huge Trekkie.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah. Huge original series Trekkie. Big fan of science fiction. And he hates a lot of the new stuff, just like we do.
I find it amazing how you've been able to sort of remain friends with people that are like so anti-Comicsgate, and yet it's all like they don't kind of register that you're part of it or something. I don't know what it is.
I know. I'm like a Teflon guy.
Yeah, it's like nothing. You're like Clinton, man. Nothing sticks to you.
That's right.
Oh my goodness.
That's because they know if they get in my grill, I'm going to kick their ass.
That's right. Oh my gosh!
I try to get along with everybody until they.
Well, so do I. Until they make it impossible, right? I mean, it's there. I don't see any point in being adversarial, especially on stuff like this, because politics or social ideology, whatever you want to call it, because people are so married to whatever they believe for whatever reason, and oftentimes logic has nothing to do with it. So arguing or debating them is pointless. So if you can just kind of say, okay, think what you want to think, I'll think what I want to think, and let's go along our merry way, at least for the small amount of time we're together at this convention or whatever, right? So, but maybe I'm dreaming of a Gene Roddenberry world where everybody just gets along.
Well, we can all hope that one day
right.
we'll be here where we can just love each other and not have any arguments at either. Like I think in Gene Roddenberry's world, if a man left the seat up on the toilet, he wouldn't get yelled at.
Even if his wife fell down in the toilet because he left the seat up at night,
No, there's no wives. No, there's none of that.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Not in the perfect world. You just you love who you want to love, man.
That's right. It's the 60s, man. It's the 60s. Remember how great they were. Pimple on the ass of mankind, I'm afraid the 60s were. But
there's some great TV shows and movies. Hey, Snippling Vaughn, thank you for that $5 super chat. Nope. First intro to Star Trek was the motion picture, and it didn't win me over. Your first mistake was that was your first intro. It should have been the TV show.
Right.
Right.
You can't get hooked on Star Trek by watching the movies.
No.
Already got to be hooked on the show, which I clearly was. So see, my mom, and I've said this before, my mom was a big science fiction fantasy fan, and like she would read all the adventure strips in the newspapers, growing up.
Yeah.
And Prince Valiant and Buck Rogers and Mandrake the Magician and all these different things. And so she was, pardon my dog, I apologize, in the background howling at the moon, but she watched Star Trek, and I was born in 64 and it premiered in 66, right?
Yep.
So I was probably catching 1968. I was 4 years old when I first started having some memories of it. And then it, of course, went into reruns, and I, of course, watched it religiously after that. But my mom is the one who introduced me to it. And what I used to do with my mom, because my dad would never go to movies. He hated movies. We took him to a movie, he'd fall asleep, right? So, and I would take her to go. We went and saw Star Trek 2 together. I took my mom to see it because she wanted to see it. So we went and saw all the Star Trek movies together. In fact, her and Mike Barr are the only two people I ever met that like Star Trek 5. So,
which one was 5?
That's where they went to meet God or whatever. The one
that the Shatner directed one.
Shatner directed and co-wrote, and you're like,
yeah.
But and so I like, when we took her to see Lord of the Rings, took her to see all the Marvel movies. She's 91 now, and her hearing is so bad that she can't pick up the dialogue. So
probably
can't take her to movies anymore because the soundtracks bury the dialogue to her, and she can't ever understand what anybody's saying. So, but yeah, I took her to all those movies, and she's the one who got me hooked on all this stuff. It always cracks me up when she goes, I don't understand what your fascination is with this, horror and all this other stuff. And I go, look in the mirror, sister. You're the one who got me started.
Hey, Dan Lawless has a great question. Would you guys say the original Trek was left or right by today's standards?
Oh, right. I mean, how could Kirk? You wouldn't say Kirk was a liberal. Would you say Kirk was a liberal?
No. But I wouldn't say it was either left or right. I would say that they were telling dramatic stories that sort of transcended. It was more about what was right and wrong.
Yes,
as opposed to right and left.
Yes, that is exactly right. So you had intelligent people making intelligent decisions about reality, right? And it had no political leaning to it. It was, it's not right to kill these people, so we're not going to kill them.
Right.
This
now,
is
the next generation clearly leaned left.
Yes.
Everything they did was, and that's how they sound. But the original series, they had different writers from different backgrounds and stuff, but they all grew up in a different era too. Gene Roddenberry was an atheist, but there was still the episode Bread and Circuses, where that's the one where they go down. There's the Roman culture that has developed into the 20th century, and they have gladiatorial battles on TV and stuff like that. And there were sun worshippers, and that was this underlying theme, was that these sun worshippers, blessed is the sun, and all that kind of stuff. And when at the end, Uhura explains to Spock can't understand, it doesn't make sense, societally, why sun worshippers would be the way they were. And that's when Uhura says, you don't understand. It's not the sun in the sky. It was the Son of God. And then their light bulbs goes off, and Kirk says, even out here,
right.
Even out here, God is out there. I thought that was fantastic, and it wasn't over the head. They didn't hit you over the head with it. It was just one of those little moments at the end, and then Kirk says, "Wouldn't it be amazing to see it happen all over again?"
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, they were being true to Roman culture, right? Is almost an inescapable reality. If this culture was mirroring Roman society, that Christians played a huge role in the early in the Roman Empire, and you couldn't how could you leave that out and be true to what you were trying to accomplish? And so, but in today's world, they would leave it out, or they'd bastardize it or something to ruin it, because their political leanings would be more important than telling.
They would rewrite it to how they want it to be.
Right, exactly. Instead of treating it as a historical event that needed to be addressed, and so I mean, they may have had no one, I'm sure, in Hollywood, not no one, but very few people throughout the ages in Hollywood would probably claim to be conservative, but they were more respectful of truth. They were more they understood how drama worked, and so they did what needed to be done. Kind of like I made the comment on Comicsgate Kings about the this guy who made the comment about how SJWs have always existed in Hollywood. It's just that they were talented and understood how to tell a story, where now they don't. And of course, Ethan brought up the point that, well, they might have been leftists, but they weren't SJWs, because SJWs, by definition, put their politics before is the most important thing. Their convictions. And even leftists in Hollywood, and boy, there was plenty of them, and even back then. But they understood how to put together a story. They understood dramatic elements and how to make something work, and they were willing to acknowledge the truth of a situation. They may not agree with it, but they were still willing to acknowledge the truth of a situation, that's what we found. There is no truth anymore, right? So
It's hey, he's a monster. Thank you for that $4.99 super chat. Me and the chat would love to hear your 2 favorite werewolf movies. And I did hear the AAWP is one. What is the AAWP? Is one for, I think, both. What is number 2? American? No.
It's not American Werewolf in London. It's what was it's not the Wolfman. It's
not the Howling.
AAWP. Werewolf in London. I don't know. All right, but anyway, so what are your 2 favorite werewolf films, since we're talking about Star Trek?
The Howling.
Really?
Yeah, Joe Dante's The Howling.
Okay.
I'm surprised that you say really, because they stole Bernie Wrightson's werewolf design.
I know. They stole characters in that movie from not just the werewolf designs, but there was actually characters in the movie that looked like Wrightson characters. Yeah. And he got nothing for that, by the way, because I asked him about it at a con when I was still a fan. And he didn't seem too pleased. But
he said, "Who are you?"
Yeah. So, you don't know me, but please sign my Frankenstein book, Mr. Wrightson. And then he met me.
Shelley, are you with this guy?
Yeah. This was pre-Shelley. So
okay.
I didn't have her along with me, so everybody remember her. It was me, the very forgettable Aaron. Okay, so The Howling, and what's the other one? What's the other one?
The other werewolf movie would have to be either The Wolfman or there's not a plethora of werewolf films.
No, or good ones.
Yeah, or good ones. Yeah, there's some pretty bad ones out there. So I'd have to say probably The Wolfman.
I would say, I really did like The Howling when it came out. Yeah. I loved the effects. In fact, I liked those effects better than, the ironic thing is I liked them better than American Werewolf in London. I liked the design better of the werewolves. And of course, Rob Bottin was the understudy for Rick Baker. And Rick actually helped him on The Howling, which pissed off John Landis, because they got The Howling out before American Werewolf in London. So you had basically Rob Bottin using Rick Baker's bladder effects with Rick's help in a movie that trumped their own film. I'd have to go back and watch it again, because I know it was kind of edgy. It was a hard R film. I've got to remember if I
which one, American Werewolf or
no, Howling.
Howling, yeah.
Because remember, that guy's like in a porn theater at the very beginning. Yeah. He goes into that, and he turns into the werewolf and everything. So it was very sexualized. Which I'm trying to remember when I was, when it first came out, I was like, yeah. Now I'm kind of like a little bit more conservative about that stuff. But I did love the makeup effects.
It's got Dick Miller in it too, so that's always a plus. You don't like Dick Miller?
What's that?
You don't like Dick Miller?
You mean Dick Smith? Or
no, Dick Miller, the actor who was in all the Corman films, and he's in every Dante film. Oh,
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
What character did he play? I bet I know his face.
He's the guy who's in the bookstore, who's selling the books about werewolves and stuff.
Oh, that weirdo guy? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And he's got the New York accent. He's from the Bronx, and he goes, he says, "Do you believe this?" "No, I don't believe this crap. I'm here to sell books. You want to buy the book?"
I don't believe this crap.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I would say I would go with Werewolf of London. Would be one of my 2 favorites. And See, I'm always swayed by the makeup more than I am the quality of the film.
Right.
So that always, because I really love Oliver Reed's makeup in Curse of the Werewolf,
Yeah,
even
but
though, like you
that's
said, it's not a
awesome.
great werewolf film, but I loved the makeup. I loved his look.
Yeah.
So I have to kind of say, okay, don't jump on that because the movie wasn't great.
That's the first time you see a werewolf with his chest.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, all the
And
hair
he
on
had
his.
white hair too. He didn't
Yeah.
have the typical brown.
Yeah.
I I enjoyed American Werewolf in London more than The Howling, even though I like the werewolves in The Howling better than American Werewolf in London. I'm not a big Landis fan either, which
Yeah.
is funny.
I like Dante much better than Landis.
Yeah, actually, so do I.
Because Landis freaking, he killed Vic Morrow. So
That's true. Yeah, dang, I'm gonna go with. I was a teenage werewolf. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna go with. I can't say The Howling because I haven't seen it in so long. I really kind of need to revisit it.
you should watch it.
But I'm going to say, without not counting The Howling, I'm going to go American Werewolf in London, and I'm going to go with The Werewolf of London. So basically, any werewolf in London is in the top of my list.
Okay. All right.
There you go.
I did not like the Jack Nicholson Wolf film.
No,
I thought Jack was miscast in that, and that just laid flat for me.
yeah, I mean, anything with Michelle Pfeiffer in it, I'll watch.
Yeah.
But
This was a good one. Silver Bullet. I forgot about that one.
now it's Stephen King, so I ban all Stephen King material.
Okay.
Um,
But how about vampires? I mean, do you discount Salem's Lot? Because that was great.
No. But only because it had that bald vampire in it that was like the Nosferatu vampire.
Yeah.
Like
Mr.
that
Barlow.
Guy. Yeah,
And it had the greatest line in any horror movie when James Mason, who is Mr. Barlow's handler,
right.
he says to the guy, he says, "You're going to enjoy Mr. Barlow, and he's going to enjoy you." And the way he says that is like so creepy.
James Mason is incredibly creepy in that show.
Yes.
I mean, incredibly creepy.
Yeah. He has this droll sense of humor too. I just love him in that.
Yeah, I got to go back and because that was a mini series originally on TV.
Yes.
And it keeps showing up, and I've seen
Toby Hooper directed it.
Did he really? I didn't.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I've got to go back and watch that because I keep seeing it shows up every once in a while, and I'll catch part of it, But it was like back then they did those. They were like 6 episodes. They were like 6 consecutive nights, or like Roots and all that kind of stuff, or 7 nights. So it's like it's like a 7-hour commitment to watch the whole thing, and it's like, so I have to go back and watch the whole thing again, but
right.
I have fond memories of it.
Angry Gamer says, wasn't Chuck Connors in a show called Wolf in the late 80s? No, it was called Werewolf. And he played a character which is named after Kolchak's character, Janos Skorzynski. Remember that was the vampire's name in the
pilot?
Kolchak, in the
pilot.
Yeah. And it was played by the guy from Star Trek who played the Vulcan in the one with Lincoln.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the same actor.
Oh my gosh, yes, it was. I can see his face now. I didn't put 2 and 2 together, but yeah, you're absolutely right.
I can't remember his name.
Now I vaguely remember this Chuck Connors show. Was he the werewolf, or was he
the werewolf? That was like the big reveal, like who was the werewolf? Because he had the guy had to track down, this young guy had to track down the original source. So he's traveling all the way, sort of like the fugitive. He's traveling all over trying to find the werewolf source, and it ends up being Chuck Connors. And he's missing an eye. He's got an eye patch on. It was really a terrifying makeup.
Was that a movie, a TV movie, or was it actually a series?
It was a Fox TV series. It was like the first, I think it was the first Fox TV show when they started to expand and do TV shows.
Wow. I vaguely remember this. And it wasn't that long ago. I should have a better recollection of it. I don't know why I don't, but I remember seeing it. Maybe I watched some of it and didn't watch all of it.
Yeah, he's talking about this for Fox for one season in the late 80s. Yeah. It's some of the episodes are on YouTube, but they're pretty hard to, the quality's not so great.
Mm. Interesting. Yeah. Do you like Lugosi's Dracula? Do you like that movie?
Yes. I love it.
Really?
Yeah, I do.
We could go on this for a while because I don't. And
okay. I understand it's a slow burn.
Yeah, but I liked The Mummy with Karloff, which is also a very slow burn.
It's also the same plot.
Yeah, maybe. I saw The Mummy first, and I was like, "This is a ripoff."
Right.
It is basically the same plot. You're right.
Oh yeah.
Did you ever see Brides of Dracula, the Hammer film?
It
had the guy with the nice hair, and Peter Cushing was, of course, Van Helsing.
Van Helsing.
It was like
that was the second Dracula movie, I think, wasn't it?
I think it was
after the first Christopher Lee one.
Right. And then they did the Bride. It might have been like 59 or something. It might have been late 50s. It was in color though, so no, it had to have been early 60s. But I remember seeing that as a kid, and it just terrified me. And I remember looking. I haven't seen it since in its entirety since the first time I saw it. But I remember looking at reviews, and it pretty much gets panned in the reviews. So I'm like, well, I don't know what it was about this, because usually vampire movies bore me, but this one and Fright Night I love.
Oh, Fright Night, the original Fright Night.
Yeah,
yeah, that's a really good one.
Yeah. Well, and again, the vampire was portrayed more as a monster, so that sort of has more of appeal to me, and was really scary in that film. And but yeah, Brides of Dracula, for some reason, I always remember that as being one of the movies that I saw that really scared me when I was a kid. So I have this sort of respect for it, and I'm kind of afraid to go back and watch it and find out that it really kind of sucked, and I don't know what I was thinking. But
that happens.
Well, there was an episode of Boris Karloff's Thriller that I watched when I was a kid, and it's about this. You probably remember the episode. Did you ever watch that show? I'm sure you probably did.
I own the box set.
Okay, so then the episode where the woman finds the wig, and the wig is of this old witch that was executed back in the 1700s, and she's playing the part of her in this movie, and so she wants the actual wig that she wore, and it basically turns her into this ghoulish, hellish thing, right? And that episode just horrified me when I was a kid, right? And I had never watched it even to this day, or till recently, because it scared me, right? And so my daughter, who doesn't like horror films at all, right? And she's 20 years old, and she says, I think you need to face your fear, Dad. We need to watch this on YouTube. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it. And so we watched the episode, and it is so hokey.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know what it was. Maybe it was the makeup at the end when the pillar falls on her and the guy turns her over and she's got all that scarring and gross makeup on her face that horrified me when I was a kid or whatever. But I looked at it now. It was like they had these shots where she would turn into this witchy creature or whatever, and when she was alone in a room with somebody, and it would kill them, and they'd be like, and then they would cut to this close up of these hands doing this. They were like disembodied in this blackness doing this, and it was so corny. It took you right out of the scene, and so we ended up laughing at it, and I was like, this is the thing. This is the one episode I remember of all the horror movies and shows I watched as a kid. This is the one that terrified me. And then we watched it, and it became just this joke. So
now Shatner was in that too. He was
in that episode?
No, in that show.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
He was actually in two episodes.
He was in a couple episodes of Twilight Zone too, wasn't he?
Oh yeah. The one about the Make-A-Wish.
Oh, that's right, the devil thing and Make-A-Wish thing, and then the terror at 20,000 feet or whatever. I remember, what was the one? Was it Night Gallery, or was it Boris Karloff Presents or Thriller, where Shatner was he in the one where like the painting of the Grim Reaper comes to life, and he's like pinned up against the door going no, and he's gonna get sliced by the Grim Reaper?
Yeah.
Was that Night Gallery or was that Thriller? That was Thriller. Okay. Yeah, I remember that one too. That was good.
That was a good one. Yeah. Oh, here we go, Marcus. This is a good one. Rosemary's Baby.
I saw that for the first time in film school, and that to me wasn't a scary movie as much as it was like just a really creepy film.
Yes, not scary, creepy.
Yeah, and it stayed that way all to the very end, and you went away feeling very uncomfortable after you watched that movie.
Yeah.
That a guy would trade his soul, his wife, to the devil for success, and it was like, what a comment about humankind. Gene Roddenberry should have watched that film. He would have got a clearer vision of what humanity was really like.
Yeah. And then I'm not a big John Cassavetes fan either. I mean, I found him to be pretentious and his method acting is just over the top for me. I just not a big fan of his. He seems like a real asshole too.
Yeah, he always came out. He was married to Gina Rowlands, wasn't he? I'm pretty sure he was married to Gina Rowlands.
Was he? Okay, maybe.
Which is kind of interesting. Have you seen the Shatner Alexander the Great TV pilot?
No, I've never seen that.
Well, Cassavetes is in it, plays the bad guy, and Adam West, TV's Batman, is his best friend in it. And it was a pilot that they shot for the show pre-Star Trek. It's black and white. And so it's even a younger Shatner. And he plays Alexander the Great, of course. And it's on YouTube. You should check it out. So you can see the entire episode. And it was a pilot which got rejected. And they later turned it into a movie of the week. I think after Star Trek got popular, they turned it into a movie of the week and released it when Star Trek was on the television series.
Oh,
and people knew who Shatner was. And it's like, we get some ratings out of this. So it was okay, for what it was, him running around in a little tunic and, sword fighting and stuff.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah.
I always wanted to see that. I always wanted to see that other one too, that he was in, was it not The Stranger? Is it The Stranger? It's about this racist guy. It's a Corman film. Mm-hmm. And he comes into town and he gins the people up, with his hate and stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
What was that? I remember Kingdom of the Spiders.
Yeah, and Devil's Reign.
The Devil's Reign. Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Michael Joseph. The Intruder.
There you go.
That's it. I knew somebody coming to my rescue.
He was also. I played a clip on one of my Sunday shows of that film. The Succubus, was the Incubus, or one of the two? Maybe it was the Incubus, where Shatner's in it, and it's all filmed in Esperanto.
Oh, I've heard about that film.
They're all speaking Esperanto. Oh my gosh! There's this scene where he's walking through. It's like a graveyard or something. I don't know if he's possessed or whatever, but he's going. He's speaking "Hola, que tatoe," and he's speaking Esperanto, but he's doing like his Kirk mannerisms and stuff, and it's gold, baby, gold.
I came across this today and thought about you. Look at that! Look at that lineup.
Golden age of Hollywood. Horror Hollywood, obviously.
Yeah.
Lon Chaney was
Lugosi, Price, Chaney Jr., Rathbone, Cushing, Lee, and Laurie. That is so awesome.
Yeah, that is great. They should do like stamps of the
Yeah.
And
you know what? It's amazing. Every one of these guys were great actors. And they're great because they could take roles that nobody else could do.
No, I agree. Basil Rathbone, I can't even watch Son of Frankenstein anymore without seeing Gene Wilder in Young Frankenstein, because he based his whole performance on Rathbone from Son of Frankenstein. Although I will say, Son of Frankenstein, the ending of that movie sucks. The whole town hates him. He releases the monster who murders people, and then they're like cheering him on when he gets on the train to leave town.
Goodbye.
Maybe they're happy he was leaving. Yeah, goodbye. Thanks for coming by and killing half the town.
Yeah, I love that movie only because it's Karloff's last hurrah, and
Bela Lugosi's really good in it too.
And Lugosi, it's Bela's best role. I mean,
Yeah.
he's just amazing in that.
Yeah.
You know, oh, sorry, I got something stuck in throat.
I was never a huge Lugosi fan, but I loved him in that film.
I love Lugosi in anything.
See, you're one of those guys, huh?
Yeah, I think he transcends the shit that he's been in. Because he's been in some of the worst movies, but he always gives 100%.
Well, I'll give you that. I just never, I don't know. He didn't, Karloff to me was always my guy, you know? I liked Karloff in anything he did. And Lugosi, I didn't like in anything he did except Son of Frankenstein. But you're right. He was put in a lot of crap films, which is maybe not fair to judge him on that then.
He was great in White Zombie.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, as Murder Legendre. Oh, yeah. He was awesome in that.
Was he in the Murder of the Rue Morgues?
Yeah.
Rue Morgue?
Yep.
Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yes. Yep.
I know Corman did a version, but there was an earlier version.
He's in the Black Cat too, the original Black Cat.
Yeah, with Karloff.
Yeah. He's fantastic in that. Yeah, you got to give.
Maybe I should Maybe I should go back and revisit some Lugosi. Maybe I should do that.
I mean, sometimes there's some of the hammy stuff, but remember, this is silent acting in the beginning stages of sound and stuff. There's some overacting by Boris too. Did you ever see the Lost Patrol John Ford film?
Yeah.
I mean, Karloff is just chewing the desert scenery.
Yeah. It was so funny. I could never, when I saw Karloff in something that wasn't a horror film, I thought it had to be a horror film. Why else would he be in it? And then you're kind of waiting for the monster to show up, and you're like, it didn't really show up. I thought this was a horror film.
You've seen Targets, right?
I don't think I have. No. Which one is it?
It's Karloff's last major film. Peter Bogdanovich directed it.
No kidding. So that would have been what, like in late 60s?
68 or 69.
Oh my goodness. And Karloff's in it?
Yeah.
I mean, familiar with the film. I've never seen it, but I'm familiar with the film. I didn't realize he was in that.
Oh yeah. He plays an aging horror star. And that's one story. And then the other story is about this sniper who's running around, sort of like the Texas sniper, who was running around killing people at the time. And the two worlds meet. And Karloff is fantastic in it.
Really?
Oh my God. It's such a send up of his acting years and stuff. And he's just amazing in it.
I'm going to have to mark that on Targets. All right.
Targets. Yeah. See, folks, you tuned in here to hear about this big brouhaha about Star Trek, and here we are talking about monster movies.
Well, it's inevitable, right? Star Trek monsters, they're like
peas in a pod.
Yep, can't separate them. I was a big Lon Chaney fan because I thought Chaney Senior, I mean, he had a face like Karloff that no matter what makeup you put on him, it worked,
Right.
And the things he did to his face, because they didn't have prosthetics and stuff when he was, just, the Phantom of the Opera makeup is revolutionary. It's just incredible.
It still holds up.
And oh my gosh, that reveal when Mary Philbin takes his mask off when he's playing the organ is still one of the great moments in cinema.
Yes.
And that's pretty remarkable for a silent film to be able to say that, but wow.
Yeah. Because it's still, it's like in Frankenstein, when Karloff makes his entrance and he backs into the room, and then he turns, and the light is on him. I mean, that is just amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you always try to put yourself in the mindset of a 1931 audience, or in the case of a Phantom of the Opera, it was 1921, maybe 22, somewhere in that neighborhood. They had never seen anything like this. Right. And wouldn't you just love to see the faces of those people or experience that sort of emotion yourself, because we're so jaded. We've seen everything. Right. And it's like nothing is going to surprise us. But back then, when movies were still new and they had never seen anything that horrifying in their lives. And people were probably fainting, women were, and it just would have been amazing to see.
Well, I didn't know pre-internet that there was going to be the chest bursting scene in Alien.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about that movie when it came out. I just knew it was a sci-fi movie and it had an alien in it, and I'm like, I'm all in.
Yeah, I went and saw that too. I didn't know anything when I saw that. I'm trying to remember what my reaction was the first. I've seen it so many times since, so it's hard to kind of separate what I felt when I first saw it.
I probably thought, that's gross, but really cool.
Yeah. Well, what pissed me off about that movie was that, and this is a typical young lad, young boy, young teenager, whatever I was, 79, 15, 14, that Dallas got killed.
Mm-hmm.
He was the hero to me in that film. And I was like, he was going to save the day. Then he got killed. And I was like, oh.
But he got killed stupidly. They had the thing on the tracker. All they had to do was say right or left. He could have taken that flamethrower and going, and he freaks out and he drops down and there he is, That
was a great shot, though. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But they made up for us by showing Sigourney Weaver in her underwear at the end of the movie. So, kind of all evened out.
Tiny, smaller underwear. It didn't even cover her butt cheek.
I know. I was like, my gosh, could they give her anything tinier? Why is she even wearing anything at this point?
Yeah. Hey, Bob Gable, thank you for that $1.99 super chat. Who is better, Roddenberry or Serling? That's like apples and oranges, I think.
I'd take Serling because Roddenberry changed over time, and Serling, of course, died young, but Serling was one of those guys that had such a high standard of quality that he held himself to, and the people that he worked with, that you got to respect that.
He was an airborne paratrooper in World War II.
Was he really?
Yeah.
So him and Roddenberry both military men.
Yep.
Interesting.
Both in World War II.
Well, of course, that wasn't that unusual for World War II because everybody fought in World War II unless there was something, physically wrong.
One of them flew a plane, the other one jumped out of it.
I'll take the guy that jumps out.
Yeah. I think Serling was more what's the word I'm looking for? He could do more. I felt like Roddenberry, he could do a few things, but Serling had more range as a writer. Although I have to say I prefer Roddenberry's body of work over Serling's. Serling did write Planet of the Apes screenplay, but Roddenberry also wrote Half Gun Will Travel. So
that's an interesting, because obviously such a huge Star Trek fan, and of course Roddenberry. He script controlled the first. Was it the first season or the first two seasons
of Twilight
Star Trek.
Oh, Star Trek. Yeah, first two. But he produced the first one. The second one, he was more hands off, and the third one he was completely hands off.
Right, because he had hired somebody to be like story editor or something. Season two that actually, season two is my favorite season. If you take all the episodes together, because there's some great episodes in 2
episodes, yeah.
And then of course, we won't talk about 3, but the first season had great episodes as well, but I don't think as many. And plus, I think they got into a groove in that second season. Here we are back in Star Trek again.
Yeah. Roddenberry didn't like season 2. He felt it was way too much humor.
Well, there was only 2 episodes, wasn't there? The Tribbles and the gangster one.
Private Little, or not Private Little War.
Piece of the Action.
Piece of the Action. Yeah.
Those were. Was there another one, or was that? I don't think there was, but you could.
Well, there was also a lot of stories where they go to planets that are just like Earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like Julie always busts on me when I say, "Oh, Star Trek." She's like, "Oh, are they going to Rome again?" I'm like, "They're
Are they
not
going
going
to
to Rome."
Nazi Germany? Um,
Yeah.
well,
Oh, look,
don't you
the
think?
1920s.
Don't you think the gangs of the 20s? Don't you think that the second season was more of, how do I want to phrase this? Was more put together as as more of an entertainment vehicle than what the first one was. I mean, I like all the episodes in the second. They had a lot of good, but they were more, like you said, there was some humor episodes in there. There was more maybe adventure, those guys doing stuff that, that maybe in the first one, it was more, they had more cerebral episodes. They still had some good
Yeah,
ones, obviously the Gorn and the Salt Sucker is a great episode, almost a
those are
horror
first season
episode.
ones. Yeah, those are
Uh,
first season episodes.
yeah, Salt Sucker was first season.
Yeah,
Right. That's what I
so
meant.
was Gorn.
But I thought that but what I was saying, those were kind of like outliers for, there was a lot more cerebral episodes, like Charlie X and things like that were well written.
Yeah,
They weren't as adventurous as the episodes of the second season were. Journey to Babel was a great one because you had
yeah,
the
that
kind of
was
the
a really
murder
good one.
mystery.
Yep.
And then of course, when Spock gets married, what was the name of that episode?
Amok Time.
Yeah, Muck Time is great.
Yeah, that's a great one.
So, but it's almost like the season 2, you can almost feel that it's sort of like they got into this sort of groove of, we're going to tell these kinds of stories. They were all pretty successful, but I thought the first season was more thought provoking, perhaps,
Yes.
than the episode 2, which was more entertainment driven.
Yeah,
And I don't know what season 3
Machine.
was.
Doomsday Machine in number 2. That was
Oh, I
great.
love that episode.
Yeah, and you know what? With the redone special effects, the remastered versions,
Yeah.
that was the one episode that really needed it.
Yes.
Because it just, the proportions were wrong,
Mhm.
the side view shots of the cornucopia,
Yeah.
uh, but now you get the rubble from the busted up planets bouncing off the
Right.
constellation and stuff, and it's so great.
Yeah, and they did that, and then that was in the late 90s, wasn't it, when they remastered those the first time and redid all those episodes? I'm sure they were, because Josh was just a little kid.
No, I think it was in the 2000s.
Was it?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I want to say it was like I don't know, 2010, 20.
it wasn't that late. I know it wasn't that late because I know Josh was a little kid when we started watching those. So it had to be right around the end of the 1990s or the early 2000s. Someone will know.
Yeah.
Spock's Brain was third season, by the way. I don't claim that as an episode. That was horrible. Who was Lee Grant? She was like, "I want to touch you. I am for you, Kirk." Or I didn't like that.
No,
one
Lee Merriweather.
Larry Merriweather. That's right. That's right. Not Lee Grant.
Yeah.
I didn't like that one either.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah, she was good looking. So give her that. I mean, at least they had, Star Trek babes. So
2008.
Was it really that late?
Yeah, the original episode, original series remastered project, produced from. Let's see.
Well, I guess Josh still would have been a little kid. He would have been 14.
Yeah, it's looking like it was 2006.
Oh, 2006.
Wait. Maybe it was 2016.
No, it couldn't. There's no way it was that late. There's no way. Not the first time they did it.
Where they redid the. I don't mean when they just. Where they redid the special effects and all that.
Right. Like the Doomsday Machine, they redid the the log in space and all the other phasers and but God, I could have I don't know. Maybe I'm misremembering, but seems to me it was earlier than that. But
yeah, it looks like 2006
or 2006. Okay, well I can So Josh would have been 12 or 13. So okay, yeah.
That's what I'm trying.
Kid's 29 now, so
Original series was ready for the future, produced from 2006 to 2008. The original series remastered was a huge undertaking. Okay.
mm,
Yeah, it looks like they started in 2006.
okay. All right. Well, no, I thought they did a great job of remastering without necessarily ruining any of the episodes. Like, Lucas would get too carried away remastering
Oh,
Star Wars.
yeah.
It wasn't even the same movie anymore, where they just kind of juiced up the special effects where they needed to be, and it really added to the film with the shows without, being any sort of detriment. It just they seamlessly, you know, work those in. So yeah, those are all that you see anymore. Really, is the remastered ones on. I mean, every once in a while, I guess Paramount TV will show like episodes that haven't been remastered, but it seems to me those are pretty much the canon now, the remastered ones. But they did a great job.
I watch, yeah.
They did a great job back in, in the 60s. The special effects on that show were really, really good considering the time period.
And how fast they had to crank them out, particularly once they got halfway through the first season. They had to cut up the original pilot to give them more time. And Roddenberry was a genius for tying that into a story and making that into 2 episodes.
Yeah, Return of the Buttheads. That was great. I felt bad for Pike, man. Poor
Yeah,
old,
I know.
stuck in that chair, and burned up and.
Right. Hey, Donnie Pearson, welcome to the channel. Thank you. Everybody here, if you haven't subscribed, please hit the subscribe button and hit that thumbs up, that like button. That helps with the algorithms and keeps the channel going.
That's right. We need your love and support.
That's right.
Taskmaster Dan's up there saying the Empath. Man, I hate that. That's my least favorite episode. And maybe it's just because it's so brutal.
That one scared me.
Yeah, it made me very uncomfortable when I was a kid. I didn't like that episode at all.
Well, because they had Kirk hanging by the chains and he was getting all whipped up, and then and when they were torturing Bones and and just that black background, like where the hell are they?
Yeah, I know. It was just it almost felt like a thriller episode or something. It was just really creepy and intense.
They made a lot out of that. With very little to work with, they made a lot out of it, I thought.
Yeah, I think a lot of people look back on it and say it was, they think it was a pretty good episode. That was season 3. And but yeah, that was just, for me as a kid, that was just too intense, and it was one I just avoided after I saw it the first time.
One of my favorites of the 3rd season is Specter the Gun.
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that, the Western.
That one. Yeah, but it makes sense. The fake backgrounds and everything. And the half built buildings and everything. It makes perfect sense because these are memories taken from Kirk, who never lived in that era, so they'd be fragmented and wrong. And it made the special effects and stuff they made the most out of that story because it works so well. It is so well tied together.
Yeah, that one, the Enterprise incident, I liked a lot.
Is that the one where they think Kirk has gone nuts and he goes into the
and Spock, they're stealing the cloaking device.
Right.
Yeah. Scotty has that great line. He calls him to sick bay and he has his ears done, right? And he goes, "You look like the devil himself." But what's it all about?
Yeah. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah. Well, I can quote Star Trek all night if we need to.
Absolutely. Rob Brown says, "Hey, Graham, be sure to show some Bela Lugosi films on this year's 31 Days of Monsters." Oh, you can be sure old Bela will make an appearance. That's for sure.
Hey, how much clippage do you show when you run those?
I get banged every time because I show the trailers.
Oh yeah.
I open the episode with the trailer.
Well, they copyright strike you, but they don't. Have they ever like blacked your screen and said shut you down for a minute and a half? So you haven't run it long enough.
I'll do a copyright strike and I'll challenge it, and about 75% of the time I win.
Yeah.
because I am using it to for educational purposes.
Right.
And they seem to buy that, except for Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is tough. They don't accept nothing. So I always lose against Warner Brothers.
Well, I remember doing over a year ago now. It was I had my top 10 films, right, of all time, and I did a show on those, and I played the trailer from each one, the full trailer.
Uh-huh.
I got shut down twice, and I'd never had that happen to me before. So I was like continually talking to the audience, even though my screen was black for like a minute and a half. I didn't even know it. And then it came back on and I was still talking. Everybody thought it was hilarious in the chat that I had no clue what had just happened. They did that to me twice in the same episode.
Was your voice coming out? Or
no, it just went black. But they were the chat was smart enough to know what was happening. And so they just hung out until I came back. And I was still just like I didn't have any clue that I had gone completely black, that they blacked out. And then they did it to me twice. Wow. So
hey, Citizen Ronan, there's a special place in hell for you for posting this.
Oh, I hate that episode.
Oh, it is the worst. I don't watch it. I'll go through and watch every episode. I won't watch that one.
Is it because of Melvin Belli as the
it's
ogre?
Everything.
I hate that episode.
It's just a scummy episode. It's just
dirty kids that kill
dirty
their
kids. Ugh.
I just
hate it. Oh, hey, yeah, Dennis reminds us. No talk of Mirror Mirror.
Oh,
yeah, that's a good one.
Is it the only episode that spawned a toy line? I mean, they had all of the the evil Spock, the evil. I think I've got the evil Uhura up there on my shelf. No, I like the costumes. You know, the outfits that they wore. How they tricked them out and kind of made him more swashbuckling and piratey, you know, and perhaps Sulu's best performance.
Yeah, he was good in that. Oh my!
Oh my! Yeah, she was pretty saucy in that. She had a nice little midriff going there.
Yeah, nice little belly action.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, let's see. We've been going almost 2 hours here. We're a lot longer than I thought we were going to go. But Aaron, I want to thank you so much for coming in and duking it out with me. I don't think I won anybody over with my my arguments for why I love the motion picture over Wrath of Khan.
But at least we understand why now.
That's right.
And you do have a logical. Spock would be proud. You had a very logical reasoning for why that is. So I give you credit.
Method to my madness.
Yes.
So I'm glad I proved you wrong. And
whoa,
round two.
Hang on now.
Let's go, Sullivan. Oh,
you and I are maybe the only two people that know who Jim Sullivan is.
That's true. Gentleman Jim. I love that movie with Errol Flynn.
Yep.
The Sullivan. No, the Corbetts are at it again.
Oh man, we should have our own like movie. We should be Siskel and Ebert, you know. We should
right. Yeah, that could be a fun show.
I don't think anybody knows at least the films that we like we know them.
True. True. But everybody in the chat, thank you for the super chats. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for coming in and listening to us prattle on about things we love. We hope you love them too. And don't forget, tomorrow, Aaron is launching at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Ethan's channel. So please go over there and support this fine young man and his great project.
This fine young man and his flying machine.
And if you haven't signed up for a Giant Size, oh my God, I still have to fulfill that. I'm waiting for the printer to send me my books. If you haven't signed up for the Ghost of Metacumba Key, please do that. It's in the description of this show, and we'll be launching October 1st, and you won't want to miss that. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll see you next time. Well, we'll see you tomorrow on Aaron's launch.
Very soon.
Okay. Bye-bye, guys.